Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar. My name is Stacey Suter, and I'm the PY's Manager for Marketing and Communications, and I'll be moderating this webinar. So, stamping in and out of the EU, the new immigration legislation for crew, and more importantly, its implementation has created confusion and problems. So, the purpose of this webinar is to provide you with clarification. Thank you to all our participants and our panelists who have joined us today. This webinar has been arranged fairly last minute before the Christmas break, but given the amount of queries we received in the past few weeks, we felt it was necessary to provide crew with some clarification before many of you traveled home for Christmas. We'll apply this new strategy going forward, where we'll organize webinars on an ad hoc basis in response to pressing issues or requests from the yachting community. We're sticking to a very tight schedule today. So after the introductions, we'll give the floor to our speakers for about 5 minutes each. Then we'll take your questions, which is the most important part of the webinar. So please go ahead and start submitting your questions in the chat, not forgetting to state your affiliation. Without further ado, Bruno, please can you go ahead and take 1 minute to introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. My name is Bruno Padula. I work for the ships agency Luise Associates in Italy, the leaders in yachting business. I take care of all the relationships with the authorities, with the local authorities in Campania region, especially in Naples port, such as harbor masters, customs, border police, is that the case? And also USMAF sanitary authorities.
Great, thanks, Bruno. Antonella, over to you for 1 minute.
Yes, okay, thank you so much for organizing the event and for the opportunity. We definitely have, you say, lots of different clients that ask the same question, so it's a great opportunity. Hopefully I don't need a lot of introduction. It's Antonella from BWA Spain, the managing partner for BWA here, and we cover all the regions of Spain and Portugal, including Canary Islands. So yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting.
Great, thanks. And finally, Jana.
Hello everyone, so my name is Jana. I'm area manager, operational manager for BWA Yachting Monaco. I collaborate with my colleagues of BWA France and Saint-Tropez as well, concerning especially these matters of immigrations and customs and stamps clear in, clear out. So all the things we'll talk about today, hopefully it will be useful for everyone. So nice to meet you all.
Great, thanks, Jana. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the situation before our speakers give us some guidelines for each of the regions. So in the past, non-EU crew who traveled and got stamped into the Schengen area on a 90-day tourist visa, or British crew who entered and stamped into the EU under the 90-day tourist allowance, have been able to stamp out of the Schengen zone and onto the yacht on which they were working, regardless of whether or not the boat was leaving the port or EU waters. This has allowed them to freeze the time on their visa and not overstay their 90-day allowance within the 180-day rolling period. However, the latest EU legislation states that this process is no longer possible. So I'm going to share my screen now and show you an excerpt from the latest legislation which applies to seafarers. I'll also add this document in the chat afterwards, so you'll be able to access it. So to highlight the key areas of legislation which has been updated in Article 11, before leaving the port, an exit stamp can only be affixed not when the crew member signs onto the vessel, but when the master of the ship notifies the competent national authorities of the ship's imminent departure. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Right, I'd like to just hand over to Bruno at this point, who will be able to give us some insight into how the legislation is being applied in Italy, which I know is one of the first countries who's been actively enforcing the legislation.
Yeah, thank you. This all happened during the last part of the late season, of the last season, of the summer. You may ask, of course, the question I think everybody wants to know is how all these changes affect the crew. So how the crew in Italy are being affected by all this change in terms of regulations. Well, the quickest answer to this question, of course, is that crew members embarking in Italy couldn't be working on board for a period longer than the time they are allowed to stay in Schengen area, accordingly to their visas and nationality. It is important to clear one pivotal aspect, though, regarding the current situation in Italy, and that will be the duration of the berth. In fact, this issue concerns mostly all the long-standing ships, that is, all the vessels which are usually in port for winter break, as well as in shipyard for maintenance and long-term works. As far as concerns all the other vessels in full activity, for example, yacht during the charter, and which take berth in port for a relative short period of time, say a week, like during the summer, like the usual activity they do during the summer, and especially when the next destination is known, for those vessels, the procedure of stamping out the no crew member has remained pretty much the same. So the police kept stamping out crew even when the vessel was leaving the berth for another Italian destination. At least that is certainly the situation in Naples. The current situation is Naples, as well as in other ports, as also Palermo, if I'm not wrong, in Sicily. I always compare myself with my colleagues from the other Italian regions. Unfortunately, this is not news as regards Italy. I'm not happy to say that, of course. Some authority offices in some regions, they interpret the law, I don't want to say erroneously, but to say they apply the rule more strictly. And so they prefer to leave a stamp out when the crew is actually leaving the Schengen area only. The vessel is leaving from Italy, for example, towards for Montenegro, for instance. There is also a silver lining, though, as some particular ports are currently stamping out of Schengen area crew joining the vessel regardless the date of departure of the next destinations. Yes, there are even some ports where some vessels are currently moored for the winter break, and the crew are normally being stamping out and so joining the vessel and take on their duty. Now, you might ask, for example, what a no crew member should expect coming in Italy during this period. Well, of course, first of all, it is necessary, since there is an high percentage of probability he won't be stamped out at the moment of embarkation, it is always very important to stay in touch with your agent prior to arrive, and so to understand what is the current situation in the specific region, in the specific port where the vessel is going to arrive. So since the crew member much likely won't be stamped out at the moment of embarkation, it will be always better to check how many days are left in case the crew member is already in Schengen area, and leave the Schengen area and then re-enter to join the vessel in the next future. There is a very interesting point that I haven't had the chance to deepen yet. It's in the Article 11 of the regulation you mentioned at the 2016-339, where it clearly says at the paragraph 3, sorry, I don't remember, it's certainly the Article 11, where it clearly says that the seafarers which are in Schengen area for the time of the vessel's stay only, that means just for their job, can ask to not receive the stamp in the airport. It's anyway, it's an aspect I hadn't had the chance to deepen yet, to explore yet, but it is something that I might suggest to explore yourself with all the airports and all the border police and all the authorities working over there. As regard instead the crew members who are already on a vessel, and this vessel, for example, is coming from a no-European country to Italy. So we have vessels coming from Montenegro to Naples, for example. In this case, all there is left to see is to check if the local immigration is satisfied to control just the passport, the regular check they do, or they want to apply a stamp into Schengen area as well. This depends always by the Italian port where the vessel is expected to arrive, and it's up to the local authority. Generally, I can tell you that if the crew remains on board on their regular duty for all the stay, no stamp scene should be carried out, and so no damage should occur. they should be free to keep doing their job on board without worrying or concerning about expiry dates. Basically, this is just the situation for now in Italy. Unless you have some particular question, I'd be happy to answer.
Brilliant. Thanks, Bruno. That was really clearly outlined. I think we'll have some questions at the end that we can direct towards you.
Perfect.
So now on to our second speaker, Antonella. Please, can you tell us if the Spanish authorities have started enforcing this legislation for yacht crew?
Yes, luckily, I would say it's not the case for Spain. We're not been receiving any indication that they will enforce the Article 11. And we actually specifically request clarification to the different authority, and they confirm that they don't have any indication that this will happen in the short term. So that said, obviously, we can't guarantee for how long this will stand, but for the moment, we can safely and happily sign everybody in and out when they arrive. I'd just like to make a couple of clarification as well, just as a standing point, let's say, of the conversation. So as happened, I believe, in every other country, when a vessel comes into Spain, we do not stamp anybody, right? So it's very important. We always say this, and sometimes I feel like a mommy. Just when you guys are joining, please, it's responsibility every single crew member to check their passport when you join it, to make sure you got a stamp of entry, and then to be very attentive of your own personal situation. So ask the captain. Obviously on larger vessels is centralized, the request of immigration, but smaller ones is not. So you want to be very attentive of when you have a stamp of entry, that is always a closure. So you have a stamp of exit when you joining the vessel. Okay, so the stamp of exit, so stamping on board, is something that doesn't need to be immediately done upon arrival. There is some allowance to be done, but make sure you do it as soon as possible. It's a silly thing to do, but it's really important. Yeah, so that's a very, very important standing point. Nobody receives a stamp of entry when you're arriving into Spain. Now, the stamp of exit, yeah, it's very important. That's the question mark and the issue that currently is in certain ports, Italian ports, right? Is that the stamp of exit, when they're joining, is not always applied, right? In Italy, it's discretion of, that's what I understood for personal experience now, is discretion of the port if they do stamp out. The stamp out will mean for the joining crew in the country to stop their time, right? In Spain, it's possible. In every port, it's possible. There is, we were mentioning, somebody was mentioning before, there is some specific location, like Valencia and Malaga. I can mention the most, how do you say, emblematic ones at the moment, where if you attempt your stuff, you don't have a guidance from an agent and it's not properly done, they may refuse to apply a stamp of exit on your passport. So again, I would always suggest to address your local agent and ask for help for this, because it's very important. So there is still in Spain, in some, the normal but not common destination, yachting destination, where there is still a little bit of doubts from the authority if they have to apply it or not. But generally, I would say 90% of the Spanish port, they all apply a stamp of exit. So we don't have that issue that Italy is experiencing at the moment. Then the other important question is, obviously, you mentioned, Stacey, at the beginning, the British citizen. For them, it's something new. Now, obviously, it's almost a year that this is in place, but the same. So basically, the British citizen follow under the same category of the rest of the Commonwealth, really. So including, obviously, the United States as well. So Canadian, United States, Kiwi, Australian, they all fall under the same category. So they do have automatically, so they do not require visa, but automatically they have 90 days over and 180 days period. For Schengen visa holder, I would say something a bit more specific, which obviously they need to pay attention on the expiry date of their visa, because that Schengen visa will automatically expire even if they've not used the 90 days. They automatically expire if they has an expiration on the visa. It's a silly thing, but it's a technicality, but very, very important. It's an easy fix. I like to reassure everybody, when you are obviously in a Schengen country, there is a proper regulation that states that all crew members can obtain an exit visa. For Spain, we always request 72 hours notice to request a visa to the authority. All the details of what is required, we can share on a later time if you want. But it's straightforward. We always get a visa granted, so an exit visa granted. If your visa is expired, you can safely stay on board. There is no issue. You are bonded to the vessel, but you obviously can stay in the 10 kilometers radius from the vessel, and there is no issue. Just the day you are departing, so the day before, normally depending on the departure time, we can issue your exit visa. Same is now for departing crew that we mentioned before, that they have a 90 days allowance. They will also have to request an entry stamp for their departure, right? So to activate their entry into the Schengen. Yeah, I think that's for now, and then we can go deeper with the question.
Great. Thanks, Antonella. I think that was really, really great, and you clarified a lot of points, so thank you. Jana, please can you tell us how the French and Monegasque authorities are enforcing this regulation?
So we are in a similar scenario as the Spanish one, because Monegasque and French authorities are checking regulations, but they are not having a massive enforcement of these laws for the moment. So it's, I don't want to say it's taken lightly, it's still under control, but it's not that strict as, for example, in Italy. The tricky thing with our territories is that both France and Monaco are part of the UE, so European Union. France is part of the Schengen space, but Monaco is not part of the Schengen space. So this is where it's a little bit easier for our Monegasque agents and crew, which are already stamped in the vessel, so out of Schengen. They just simply arrive in Monaco. They are not requested for any other stamps. And generally, as Antonella in Spain, we do not stamp in and out every time a vessel leaves or arrived into Monaco or France. Simply the crew and the people on board has to check their personal situation concerning the visa experience and concerning how many days they are already using in the Schengen area. So this is, yeah, I would say this is easier for this. The other tricky part of, let's say, this aspect is that a boat in Monaco is stamped by the border police, which is situated in Menton, which is a French territory. And all other French territories depends on Nice or on Cannes border police and custom police, actually. So this is also something we have to pay attention to when we apply, and depending on where the boat is, this is very important. The police is really, let's say, attentive on this aspect. For example, border police in Menton may not stamp a crew coming from a vessel being anchored, for example, in Beaulieu. I don't know if you have an idea of the area. All ports are close to each other, but the limitation is very clear for the police. at this time of the year, actually, because I have to say, as Bruno said before, that the legislation is changing, and especially in this the last few months of the year and of the summer season. So everything is constantly under question mark, I would say.
Perfect. Thanks, Jana. I think that's definitely helped give us a bit more information about the regulations in the region. So I think right now it's probably a good time that we dive into the questions that we've received from the participants in the chat. And I've seen quite a few have come through. So the first question comes from, this was actually posted on the Super Yacht Captains Forum. So the question is it possible for seafarers who are not residents in the Schengen zone to obtain a transit visa that will allow them to travel from the point of entry into the Schengen area to a vessel lying in the Schengen area port instead of entering as a tourist? So I don't know who wants to answer that question. Bruno, would you be able to answer that?
Sure. No. I'd like to explain how transit visa procedure work here in Italy. Normally, transit visa must be always requested 48 hours in advance, and it can be requested just for specific reasons. For example, a crew member who needs to disembark from the vessel. So let's say a crew member who's already embarked on a vessel, he's stamped out, he's still out of Schengen area. He needs to reach the airport, for example. He has no Schengen visa and he needs it. In that case, we have to apply for a transit visa request, but the transit visa request cannot be done for any reason, just because the visa is missing. It must be done just for termination of the employment of so the crew member is leaving permanently the vessel and going home, or because the crew got sick and so he needs to go to the hospital, he needs to be hospitalized, or an emergency. Of course, emergency cannot be, for example, the fact that the crew members needs to go on holiday. The emergency is like the death of a relative in his country. Sometimes we have applied, it's an exception, it's not the proper procedure, but we also applied for a transit visa in order for a crew member to disembark from the point, from the port where the vessels arrived, on which he was on board, to reach another port where there was another vessel, where he needed to take another job, a new job. But that is an exception. So we can always discuss with authority. We have an open relationship with them. We can speak with them. It's not like they are strict-minded. But of course, there is a procedure, and normally we are forced to follow those rules. So transit visa in Italy can be requested normally just for these three reasons: emergency, sickness, or termination of the employee agreement. So I don't know if this can help the
so
person.
That specifically answers people wanting to leave from the boat out the country, but people who want to transit into the country to travel to the boat, how would that be applicable?
No, in that case, I don't think so. They also because consider that normally when the transit visa is released, it's always released in the same date that the crew member is going to leave.
Okay.
This transit visa, sorry, allow me also to clarify this other point. These transit visa are called VTL. Just they are this visa can be at the most be 3 days long. They do not allow a long transit in Italy. That's also the other part that everybody I think needs to know.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Like the same. It's just to add, it's exactly the same. Actually, funny enough, it should apply the same to every country in the Schengen area. Everything we are talking about should be applying for every country, but it's not. In this specific case, it's the same. And it's how do you say? It's not possibly the answer that the crew member wants to hear, but normally in this case, it will have to exit Schengen and then re-enter with the transit visa again, issued from outside the Schengen, if it makes sense.
Perfect.
It can't transit within Schengen, basically.
Okay. I think that makes sense. I've just got one other question just came through, and so this is, I think this is probably best for you, Bruno, to answer. Would it be possible for someone whose boat is, say, for example, based in Livorno, to stamp out at another port that maybe is a bit more lenient, say Genoa or another port in Italy, and then travel back to their boat? Or do you have to stamp out at the port that your boat is based?
I was actually reading these same questions right now from a stewardess
Yes.
in Livorno. Yeah. No, I was actually reading. In fact, I was going to ask, may I answer this question? Because this question interests me. It's a very important question. Many people have made this question rightfully. Unfortunately, the answer is no. Properly, the procedure. If we want to apply the old regulations, for which the port and so the vessel is a frontier, and so that's the part where I'm crossing a frontier. You know, when I'm embarking, when I'm signing on the vessel, or I'm signing off, that's the part where I'm crossing a frontier. That means that that's the only place where the stamp out in can be applied. Yes, I'm not absolutely surprised to know that there are some ports where the police officer is willing to just help and put a stamp out because they are aware, they know that the crew are can have damages, problems over running days out, and so they simply put a stamp out. Yes, I know this happens. I know a guy who does that, a police officer, a friend of mine, who always is a great person. He always helped me. He knows about everything. Sometimes he simply asked me to show the seaman book, just to show that these people are actually seafarer and where they have actually embarked, because sometimes it is always registered on their seaman book. And so this police officer usually stamps them out regardless where the yacht is or where they have actually embarked. Yes, that's the case. But this is it's always an exception. This is not the proper. So this is a thing that we might do, but we cannot demand to do.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bruno. There are lots of questions coming through, so I'm just going to try and go through each of them. So the next one is from Dan. And the question is, so what are the exact actions to take in Italy for those crew members with a Schengen visa without a stamp out, living on board the yacht in the shipyard? So
sorry, I was looking for the question. I wanted to read it myself.
That's fine. So what are the actions that a crew member can take in Italy if they have a Schengen visa and they are not stamped out? So they're currently stamped into the EU, but they're living on board a yacht that's based in the shipyard.
If they've been stamping into Schengen area, they are running out of days. So unfortunately, and this has been the case during the last month, some of these crew are forced to leave the Schengen territory for some times and then go back and take their job again. That is the main issue, right? That is the actual problem some of us are having with this new legislation. And as you said, you have spoken about shipyards. Yes, that is the problem. As I said first, all this issue of not stamping out crew members joining a vessels, it's about vessels being in shipyards or long stay. That's the problem. So unfortunately, if they've been already stamped into Schengen area, they are forced to leave. This, or otherwise, we might find a solution. For example, move the vessel somewhere where you might find a person like my friend, and then we can fix this kind of things. You know that the job of a ship's agent is always to find a solution during the way. As up as I don't want to mention Indiana Jones. I don't want to quote Indiana Jones, but we really do this sometimes as up as it goes. Really.
Okay, thanks. The next question is from Mike Anderson, and it's: the vessel I work on is currently in San Remo, Italy. When I rejoin the vessel after my leave, can I get stamped out and onto the vessel, so stamped out of the EU and onto the vessel using the customs office in Menton in France?
So stamping out in another country?
Yes.
Yeah, in France, in Menton actually.
Yeah.
Menton is the closest, Menton is stamping so vessels in Monaco, but is also the closest French city to the Italian border, to the Ligurian border, to the Riviera. No, unfortunately not, because Menton Border Police is now stamping boats in Monaco waters, in Monaco ports, so Port Hercule, Port de Fontvieille, which is the smallest one. They extended, because they are comprehensive as well, they extended this possibility to boats being berthed in Cap d'Aille, which is really closest to Monaco. But then for all the others areas, we have to refer, in France, of course, we have to refer to Nice Police or Cannes Police. So they will not, the border police in Menton will not allow someone, a crew berthed in Sanremo coming to Menton to get the stamp, unfortunately.
Thanks, Jana, that was helpful. The next question comes from Steve, who's a captain on a 38-meter in Saudi Arabia. He says, how can we check the current status of a non-Schengen passport holder? How do we know how many days they have spent in the Schengen in the past 180 days? Is there a website or something?
No, they just needed to check on the last stamp. The last stamp, they have to open the passport, check what is the last stamp. It is a stamp out, is it a stamp in? For example, it's a stamp in. So I am actually running out of days. I check the dates, I check how many days I am allowed to stay in a Schengen country, and I simply make 2 + 2, and I realize how many days are left. So if I have to go out of Italy, I've been speaking from Italy, of course, of Schengen area in general, or if I have still time to do my job. For example, if a non-European crew member is coming in Italy or in other Schengen countries, he has a Schengen visa of 90 days allowance to stay here, and he's going to be here just for 60 days. So there is 1 month left. He can carry out his job with no problem, even if they don't stamp out. Even if they don't stamp him out of Schengen area when he joins the vessel, he will have plenty of time to carry out his job and then go back his own.
Perfect, thank you. Next question comes from Jonathan, who's a captain on a 38-meter. So regarding requesting to not receive a stamp into the EU at the airport, my chief officer tried this and it caused confusion and irritation for the passport control immigration officer. I suppose it may depend on whom you get on the day. And then connected to this question, how can we prove immigration at the airport so that they don't stamp us in? So I think,
that's about what I said before. Yeah, because there is this part, the paragraph 3 of the Article 11, where it clearly says so. It actually says, it says clearly that seafarer can request to not being stamping into Schengen area, to not receive any kind of stamps if they are going to stay in Schengen area just for the time to carry out their operation on board of the vessel. This is something I have no experience, unfortunately. It's an interesting part which I want to stress out. I didn't have it's not just a matter of time to explore this part, but it is also a matter of finding the right person to speak with. So I can understand that sometimes a small officer in the airport can get easily irritated, because if you take him out of his safe zone, which is simply put a stamp here and out, in and out, he can get a little bit confused, very easy peasy. It is something we have to understand yet. So if you ask me theoretically, I think that the only way to make properly such a request is to show them the employee agreement, and to show them that they are actually going to work from this date to this date on board of these vessels, which is moored into this Italian port, for example, and she will be moored in this Italian port for all the winter, for 9 months, for example. And so perhaps I think this could be done as the law says there is a way to do it. I have no specific experience of that, but I think it can be done. It's something we need to explore. If I will find the right person to speak about this, be sure that I will spread out the word, and I will explain how to do this.
Great, thanks, Bruno. So the next question comes from Adam. Is there a work visa for crew who are on board a yacht while it's in a yard having work done? he said specifically in Italy. So this is for longer than 3 months and then continuing with the Mediterranean season afterwards. Specific itinerary is currently unknown and not confirmed.
So asking for a visa longer than 90 days?
Yes, so is there a work visa for crew who are on board a yacht that's based in a shipyard in Italy?
I don't think there is a specific visa for that. There are many types of visa. There are visa that allows people to stay in Schengen area even for 1 year, if I'm not wrong. I couldn't tell what are the exact requirements to ask for such a visa. For example, I do remember that in the past, many crew members, Philippine crew members, for example, they arrived in Italy with a transit visa or 1 entry only and 2 days of stay only. So they needed to be stamped out immediately. Otherwise, they were forced to be rejected from out of Italy. I also met a crew member who had a visa valid for 1 year. I think they are called visa of type D, if I'm not wrong. But sometimes, most of the times, crew members can ask for a residency permit. I know this is about another kind of legislation, the decree from 1998 that applies for that regards residency permit. Most crew members, they don't have a Schengen visa because they have a residency permit in Schengen area, a court of séjour. So they are not even to be stamped out of in. They are authorized to enter and leaving the country whenever they want.
Perfect. Thanks, Bruno. The next question, I think, is for you, Jana. So this is from Philip. How will this apply to yachts in shipyards in France? So is there a specific visa or situation that, solution for crew who are based in shipyards in France over the winter?
I would say that they have to run on the visa they already have on the passport. Actually, that's the visa they are using, the visa they have applied in their origin country. Because just for info, we are not providing visas. Monaco is not providing visas, and France neither is not providing any visa except the transit one we have talked before, like Bruno mentioned, in case of emergency or a few other scenarios. That's the only temporary and short-term visa that authorities can supply. Otherwise, we have to refer to the visa in the passport of the seafarer, and we have to check, and he or she has to check for sure the days running out or stopping actually while in the country, in the Schengen area or not Schengen area, depending if it's on board or not on board, of course.
Perfect. Thanks, Jana. The next question is for you, Antonella. So this is from Stefan. As a South African currently in Spain, my visa expires on the 24th of April and it's a 90-day visa. So the 90 days expires in mid-Feb. Can we fly to Croatia and re-enter Spain until the expiry at the end of April?
That's tricky.
Okay, well, when I get some question like that, I always need to ask more questions to understand, because if his visa, if his visa is expired, if his visa is expiring in April, right?
Yes.
I just need to understand if it's been stopped. That's the first question. The first question that I will ask him, meaning that, if it makes sense. So he got a visa to enter, he joined the vessel, and then his agent should have stamped out, right? So he stopped his days. This will be, I don't know if he's in the.
So I think it's my understanding from his question that he hasn't been stamped out because his 90 days expire in mid-February. So I think
that's the first thing he has to do very quickly. So there's two different things, as we mentioned before. There is an expiry date for the visa itself, and then that visa is expired if he used his 90 days. So the first thing immediately he wants to do is contact us if he doesn't have an agent, and we can stop his days running. That will be something that I'll advise him to do immediately. And then for obviously the actual expiration of the visa, there is nothing we can do within the Schengen. So he will have to exit and then request by a Spanish embassy, for example, a new visa, or go back to South Africa and request in South Africa a long-term visa.
Perfect. Thanks, Antonella. So the next question relates specific to UK citizens. So the question is from David: how does this work for UK crew who cannot get a visa, who only have 90 days? Will we be forced to leave the yacht and our job as well? And obviously, if they've finished their 90 days, they'll have to wait for that 180-day period to finish before they can re-enter.
We're talking about Italy, right? Because for Spain, we can stop them.
Okay.
And I think a concept that sometimes it's very simple, but many people don't get is that luckily, as I was saying, I'm talking now clearly for Spain, exclusively for Spain. We can pause, we can stop the days. So when you are joining the vessel, you are flying in. We said the first example is a yacht arriving, right? So a yacht arriving, nobody gets stamped for the first time. Let's say real case scenario, they're arriving from the Caribbean, they're from Gibraltar, outside the EU, nobody gets stamp of entry, right? So nobody has to worry about their time running. Nobody has a stamp of entry. Now the scenario changed when a crew member, British crew member, talking about the specific case, flies in at the airport, right? He is arriving into Barcelona, for example. He got a stamp of entry, and then that moment is it's ticking from that moment. So you want to reach out to your agent and stop that time. So at that moment, it's like leaving with the stamp of exit. So boarding the vessel, you are technically and to all effects legally leaving the Schengen area. And you are under the flag states of that vessel. So you are outside. And that time, you can stay as long as you need, and you don't have to worry about your time running. This is a simple concept that many people still don't understand. So at that, yeah.
Thanks, Antonella. I think that definitely makes it clear, but I think also there's a question that's come through from Jeremy that says, are there any plans for the rules to change in Spain and France, similar to what's happened in Italy?
In the short term, I think he was not at the beginning of the conversation, because I did mention that we obviously have lots of crew members concerned. So we raise this question to our different authority in the different port. And to this day, they have no, I would say, no indication that in the short term, this will change. And normally, obviously, when this important news come out, there is also always an allowance. So I don't think realistically, to be on a safe side, I don't think in the next 6 months, at least, it's not likely to happen.
I want to just jump into the conversation to join totally what Anto said. Firstly, concerning the scenario she described about stopping the days, it's the same in France. And same for the regulations. Actually, we had been voicely notified that there is a project of law changes about the stamp in and stamp out. But these days we have no clear, let's say, timing in order to know when this will change and how long it will take in order, to put everything in place. So not really in the near future.
Perfect. Thanks, Jana. This question is for you, and it's from Tom. To get stamped out the EU and onto a vessel in France, specifically in Nice, can this be done just by the crew member themselves, or does it have to be done through an agency?
It has to be with an agency, simply because we are a legal representative of the crew member on the French territory before he or she get the stamp. So this is why we have to support and assist the crew with our presence, whether they are stamping in Nice or they are stamping in Menton or in Cannes, because of this legal representation and legal protection during actually the trajectory from the boat to the police and back.
Thanks, Jana. So a question that's come through from Mike. What are the consequences for yacht crew who overstay their 90 days?
Unfortunately, there is the rejection in that case. So they are basically forced to leave immediately the Schengen area. In some serious case, this could involve also the fact that they are forbidden to re-enter in Italy in the next future. And unfortunately, the next future, it means in the next 3 years sometimes. This happened very few times in the past, much earlier than all these issues, the current issues. And in that case, we simply called for a lawyer and to assist legally the crew members. And we obtained quite immediately a suspension of the sentence. And so the crew members were allowed to re-enter in Italy pretty much quickly and fast. But of course, there is the problem that they are for sure obliged to leave the Schengen area immediately as soon as they have overpassed the 90 days. And if I may, I was reading many questions for me, specific for me, and they are pretty much asking all the same things about all these consequences. So what they can do in the moment that they are aware the vessels will be much longer than 90 days in the shipyards, and the crew members needs to carry out their work on these vessels. I want to be honest. As you know, that's the main point of this all this discussion. We in Italy have this. We have had these changes that ships on long-term stay are not longer seen as actual frontier. So the crew member joining these vessels are not going to be stamped out immediately. There are just two options. Either the organization of the work is made in a way that allows the crew member to rotate on each 3 months, and so nobody's going to lose their days. Either this, or they need to be in touch with their ship's agent to understand which port still allows the stamping out, stamping in regularly as before. There are some Italian ports where this is currently happening. Okay, so it's not like it's not night everywhere. We have some safe spots, safe places where to go.
Perfect. Thanks, Bruno. I think that helped clear that part of the question up. So the next question comes from Modiot Deniki. So this question is specific to British yacht crew. So what happens when the British crew have to apply for a digital working visa? So I haven't come across this term before. I don't know if any of you have.
Digital, you say
digital
digital
working visa. No. Okay,
to be honest, no.
Okay, related to that question, they've said, what happens if the Italian border don't stamp in at the airport due to using the electronic passport control? There will then be no stamp in my passport. Are the 90 days logged electronically?
But no, all the EU citizen now cannot do the entry because there is a proper new section. So before they could go through with the European citizen, but now they have to go through a different path. So they will always
have a stamp.
Have a stamp. It's for every citizen is not.
Yeah, it's the problem now.
The electronic, they can pass through
the problem nowadays is not being stamped out, but as regard the stamping, this is pretty much always happening. It's very hard to have a no European citizen coming by air, not getting stamped into Schengen area and simply passing the frontier. No, it's very difficult.
Yeah, and if I can ask that actually to put at ease one crew member that asked a question for myself, but it was linked to Bruno's basically intervention. So if a real case scenario, if you, Bruno, could confirm that this is okay. So a vessel arrives into Barcelona. They do the crew changes here in Barcelona. Real case scenario. We stamp this crew out on board the vessel. Then they're arriving into Italy. No authority in Italy for a vessel coming from Spain will stamp in entry again the crew member, because obviously no. If the
No, it will be
reassurance,
crazy. No, it will be crazy.
but just to reassure everybody that nobody in
I-
Italy will stamp in entry of
No, hello, me. Very, very good point. Thank you, Antoinette. It is true that it's up to the local authority discretion to carry out sometimes further checks on board. Okay, but whenever the vessel is coming from another Schengen port, normally no other immigration check should be done. Consider also how many vessels comes in Italy during the year. For the border police, it's a relief for themselves to know these vessels is coming from France or from Spain, so they are not called to make all the passport check and everything. But normally, no, they are not going to be stamped in like they in Spain they missed your stamp. I will do here. No, this won't happen. And normally, if the vessel is coming, even if the vessel is coming from Montenegro, like I said before, in Italy, with all the crew embarked, they shouldn't absolutely not be stamped into Schengen area just because the vessel is coming from no Schengen area. They are simply they are still working on board. And if they need to disembark here in Naples, for example, they can be stamped into Schengen area regularly in order to reach the airport and leave.
Yeah, because one thing, if I'm allowed, there is always some confusion. One thing is the vessel's clearance.
Absolutely.
So it's a vessel clearing from outside Schengen into a country, and the different things is obviously the clearance of the crew member, the individual crew member.
It's a total another matter. Yes, absolutely. Totally different matter. And if I may add at this point, we are just speaking about seafarer in this section, not mention about simple guest on board. Okay, because this is also very different. If a vessel, for example, worst case scenario is coming from Albania, I don't want to say always Montenegro, okay, another no-European country, from Albania with guests on board, regardless of all the COVID regulations nowadays and restrictions, the guests on board are no-European, they have no visa. In this case, that is a very, very bad scenario that must absolutely not be happening, because crew and guests are not seen the same way. Okay, because crew are seen as people traveling for working demands, while a guest coming by sea as well as from the airport, they have always to go through an immigration check and be stamped into Schengen area. If they have no visa, basically they are not entitled to enter. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Bruno. So we have only a couple of more minutes left. So I'm just going to read through two final questions. So the first question is from Valia, and it says, does the flag of the yacht matter? And if so, how?
Not in Italy. Not in Italy. As Antonella said, one thing is the vessel, one thing is the crew members. It's two total different matter. The flag of the vessel matter is important just as regards the clearances for the vessel. Okay, no things required as regards the Schengen country or the stamping in, stamping out.
Same here.
Perfect. Okay, and then last question. So this is from Edward, and where can we find information on all the regulations? Is there somewhere they can go and read?
I can tell you that normally I receive all the official paperwork by the Asso Agenti Association. So it's a private channel we have. And I also speak a lot with the local authorities. I always go to the source directly. You can find, I'm sure you can find a lot of websites speaking about this. One in particular, at the moment, I couldn't really tell. I could just suggest about a very good website, the official website as regard the COVID regulations, which is also very important nowadays. But as far as concerns the Schengen matters, the best suggestion is always be in touch with your ship's agent, always, prior to the arrival, of course.
We, as concerned in France and Monaco, we usually getting all the official information from the authorities themselves. So that means the border police. And then we're relating, of course, with captains and with the crew in case of changes or, updates. So this is our official source of information.
Perfect. Just one final question, and then we'll close things up. So from Laura Waldis, most of the restricted national crew contracts are longer than a 3-month period, and therefore require to be on board for longer than 3 months. Therefore, if stamping out of the EU, then it would limit the time spent for the vessel in the Schengen area, as we cannot send home all crew after just 3 months, just for the vessel to stay. How can we get around this problem? Or is the only solution for the vessel to leave the Schengen area? Sorry, I know the question wasn't quite clear, but hopefully.
I actually understood. As far as concerned myself, sorry, Antonella was going to.
No, I was saying that it's a very deep and complex question, so it's clear, but quite deep.
Normally I like specific questions. It always it means the person is really deep into the into the subject.
Yep.
Yeah, but this looks like one of I have kind of already answered before. It means you need to understand where the port, which is the port where the vessel is going to be berthed, and so to understand if in that case the authorities are strictly applying these new regulations, not stamping out crew members. You say we cannot send all the crew members at home at once. I hope nobody, no crew organization needs to leave all over at the same time. As far as concerns Italy, the suggestion is always the same. Try to find a shipyard in a port where immigrations are still willing to help, to assist in this way. They understand the problem. They are still stamping out crew members anyway. Otherwise, the organization right now temporarily must be made in a way that the crew members will not be losing all their days.
Thanks.
Or they will have a chance anyway to rotate with the other colleagues, with the other crew.
Perfect. Thanks, Bruno. Okay, to quickly tie things up, because we've reached our time limit for today, if you have any more questions, feel free to send them directly to me at communications@pya.org, and we can try and point you in the right direction. We'll also be releasing all the answers to the questions we received in the webinar in our next members newsletter. So if you're not already a PMIA member, you can sign up via our website today using the code WEB21, so that's WEB21, and you'll get a 20% discount. So thank you everyone for joining. Thanks to our panelists. We hope it's been really useful. If you have any suggestions for further future webinars, feel free to contact the PYA directly to suggest them. Just thank you to everyone, and we hope you have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Season.
Best
wishes. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.